Chase Goodbread from NFL.com and Crimson Cover TV is in Music City covering the draft. Good morning, Chase.
Pretty clever music back there. There you go. Been hearing just country music all week here.
I bet you have. From what I've been able to see, and you're there, so I want to get a firsthand account, but watching some of this pre-draft coverage on television, of course, we know Nashville's become a really happening city anyway. I mean, it's one of the go-to cities for people, yuppies that want to move and be in a hip place. So it's happening anyway, but it looks like they have laid out the red carpet for this NFL draft up there in Nashville.
They have. It's quite a setup for sure. Of course, they've got the draft stage set up at Broadway and First, which is right in front of the Cumberland River as that rolls by. So it's pretty nice scenery. Across the river, you've got Nissan Stadium where the Titans play, and they've kind of got that temporary tent city set up with the entertainment district over there. And, of course, the draft stage being at the end of Broadway, it faces all that neon lighting from all the bars and restaurants that all go all the way down like 4 or 5 blocks, which, of course, has kind of become a signature scene in Nashville. So, yeah, it's something else. There's a stage and a drum kit and guitars blasting in every single bar and restaurant on that street.
Wow, man, I'm envious that you're up there getting to cover it. Listen, a lot to talk about with Alabama, but I want to jump right in on Kyler Murray because the one thing about the draft is by the time it gets here, you're and I know you're working for NFL.com, you can maybe even take it to a different level, but I'm just worn out with all the mock drafts and all the analysis. But all we had been told was that Kyler Murray was going number 1 to the Arizona Cardinals. It was a done deal. Nothing was going to change that. And now all of a sudden, maybe it was Pete Prisco might have been the first to report it. I'm not sure, but a couple of people said, well, not so fast. And now everybody's scrambling to, well, maybe it won't happen. What's going on with Kyler Murray in Arizona? Have you got any insight?
I haven't talked to anybody with the Cardinals, but I kind of said from the beginning that it didn't smell right to me because trading Josh Rosen is not an easy thing. It's not a simple thing. And taking Kyler Murray number 1, it's kind of got to be predicated on trading Rosen. Well, you just took the guy in the first round last year, which means he's got first-round money. He did not play especially well last year, but he also didn't have a lot of help around him in that Cardinals offense. And so he's a difficult guy to judge value-wise. Whatever interest there is in him, the Cardinals are getting lowballed based on the way he played last year. But, those same teams are in their own draft rooms, probably saying, hey, he got cut a bad hand in year 1 in Arizona, and that's why they want him. They think the ceiling's higher. So, but moving him is not going to be easy. And I've said for weeks and tweeted the other day, I don't think the Cardinals are going to take him number 1 because I'm not convinced they're going to be able to get what they want for Rosen.
Makes sense to me. I kind of feel like you do. I just really do. Let's get to the Alabama contingent. And of course, we're going to begin with Quinnen Williams because if Arizona decides to go in a different direction with that number 1 overall pick, there's some chatter. They might draft Quinnen Williams. Now, it looks like the 49ers want Bosa. Maybe Arizona's trying to entice them into a trade to move up to get the number 1 pick. I don't know. The Jets seem enamored with Ed Oliver. I don't see any way that Williams goes past the Raiders at 4, but what's the latest intel you've got on Quinnen Williams?
I think the Jets at 3, the Raiders at 4. There's a good chance that's going to be your window for Quinnen Williams. Like you said, it wouldn't be a shock for him or Bosa to go number 1. If the Cardinals don't take Murray, then anything can happen. So the Cardinals kind of set the ball rolling and dictate a few things, obviously for the teams right behind them. But it's a loaded draft for defensive talent. It says a lot for Quinnen Williams. Not only that he's going to be a top 5 pick, but that he's going to be a top 5 pick in a year where there are talented defensive linemen all over the place, not just ends but tackles too. And he's going to be, probably the first defensive tackle drafted. So phenomenal year for him last year at Alabama. Obviously, kind of springboarded all that, but Jets and Raiders, I think, are probably your best bets on him.
Chase Goodbread, NFL.com, Crimson Cover TV, with us from the NFL Draft in Nashville. Let's get to Jonah Williams because, I mean, when this draft process started, I think most people had him ticketed as probably a top 10 pick in the first round. Then the combine where, oh my gosh, his arms were half inch shorter than ideal. Some other things came up about maybe he's too analytical, too smart for his own good. The story came out that he'd been asked to move to center at Alabama and refused, threatened to transfer. Still going to be a first rounder. The question is, do you draft him as a left tackle, a right tackle, or a guard? And where now do you see him being taken in this NFL draft? Is it a top 10 pick between 10 and 20? Where do you think Jonah Williams will wind up being selected?
I think somewhere between 10 and 20 is probably about right for him. I think, despite all the talk that his arms are on the short side and that he may be a guard at the NFL level, and maybe that is where he ends up. But I think what you're going to see whoever drafts him do is roll him out there at tackle to start with and find out what he can do. You don't draft him and assume he can't play tackle and throw him in at guard from day one. You put him at tackle, which is generally the more valuable position, and depending on what team you end up on, it's potentially the position of need as well. And you see what he can do. And if he's going to fail, you let him fail before you even think about moving him to guard. So a lot can happen with Jonah Williams. I think that 10 to 20 neighborhood is probably right for him. Probably the ceiling might be the Buffalo Bills at number 9. If he does crack that top 10, I think the Bills at 9 is a good bet for him for sure. Packers at 12 would be one to watch for as well.
The big question, Chase, for Alabama in terms of the overall number of potential draftees is how many first-rounders will the Tide get this year? Those two we know. The Williams guys are going in the first round. Josh Jacobs, feeling is still that he's going to be the first running back taken, but the question is, does that mean he goes in the first round or the second round?
Yeah, not necessarily. I think he will go in the first round. It's been fun to follow his progress, and he's been a little bit like Quinnen Williams in that he's come out of nowhere. Absolutely nobody saw him coming out for the draft early after his sophomore year, and even he had his best year by far for the Crimson Tide last year, and just kind of came out of nowhere, a lot like Quinnen Williams did. I think he does go in the first round. I think the Eagles are one to watch for. They're picking at 25. That could be a good landing spot for him. That was one of 3 teams that he took an official visit to. He also took visits to the Ravens and the Colts, I believe. And watch out for the Raiders, too, maybe taking Josh Jacobs. I mean, they've got 3 first-round picks, and, it's yeah, I kind of think he could end up there. You got Marshawn Lynch, having to replace him. It could be a fit for him in Oakland as well, and I guess eventually Las Vegas.
The last player I think that has an opportunity to go in the first round from Alabama is Irv Smith Jr. And I was making my predictions for whatever they're worth, and I'm going to go ahead and pick him in the first round. I just think in this day and age in the NFL, Chase, a tight end, yeah, you got to be able to block some, but tight end's about catching the football and running with it, and he can do both those things. He's a dynamic playmaker at the tight end position. The Patriots are losing Gronk. I think that's a possibility. I think he's going to sneak into that bottom of the first round. You agree?
He could. If Alabama gets 4, it'll be because Irv Smith buzzed in there and took one of those late spots in the first round. You point out the Patriots. I definitely think that could happen. They obviously got to do something with the tight end position. Green Bay's sitting there at number 30 might be one to watch. Aaron Rodgers, could use a couple more fresh targets offensively in that offense. So that's a couple spots to watch for him. Another thing to look out for, too, though, is at the end of the first round, one thing that happens to anybody who's not a quarterback is they can get bumped like that. So, for instance, if somebody picking at the top of the second round decides that they see a quarterback that they like fall, there's always or almost always an effort to try to trade up and get into the back end of the first round to get that quarterback. Saw it happen with Lamar Jackson last year, as a matter of fact, when the Ravens got him, because when you get him in the first round, you get that extra year of control under the collective bargaining agreement. And, you know, somebody like Irv Smith, who's sitting around waiting to be picked, can get, you know, another team can jump into that spot, take a quarterback, and, you know, a guy like Smith, you know, can maybe have to wait till day 2 because of something like that.
Visiting with Chase Goodbread from NFL.com and Crimson Cover TV. He's in Nashville for the NFL Draft. All right, the draft can be a peculiar thing. Where these guys are slotted, I think sometimes it's driven as much by perception as it is reality. And once a guy starts to slide, we see it every year. It's hard to stop it. Deonte Thompson, I mean, you look back 5-6 games into this past season, Chase, and people were saying he's a lock first rounder. I mean, he's a cover safety that can support in the run, ball skills, can tackle. And then all of a sudden, by the end of the year, you know, he didn't play well against Oklahoma. He didn't play well against Clemson. Then he was hurt, didn't do anything at the combine, couldn't work out his pro day. And now I'm seeing 4th round on this guy. And this was a guy who came out early and you know, with good reason. Like for a while, he was going to be a first rounder. What happened?
You hit on it. I definitely think, you know, his play wasn't as strong late in the year as it was early in the year. That's a factor because the scouts definitely like tape that's consistent from September to November and December. And the fact that he wasn't able to run doesn't help him either. I mean, you know, speed's a big deal at his position. He, unfortunately for him, injured his wrist. I think while he was training for the combine, doesn't do anything there. Actually scheduled a makeup pro day on April 2nd with hopes of being able to turn in a 40-yard dash there, and wasn't quite ready with that wrist even then. So those are some of the questions that can leave a guy with a first or second round projection in the 3rd or 4th round. I think the 3rd round is probably about where we'll see him go. He's a talented kid, and you know there's a lot of pedigree with Alabama defensive players, and a lot of respect for him around the NFL since Nick Saban's been, you know, producing so much talent on that side of the ball, especially. So 3rd round, I think, is probably where he ends up, but it's hard to say when there are some, you know, question marks like the ones we've talked about.
I can't wait to get your take on Mack Wilson. To me, every year there's a few wild cards in this draft. I think he's one of them. I could see a team looking at his athletic skills and falling in love with him and saying, man, this guy's just scratched the surface. He can run. He can cover. You know, he seems to be a big hitter, although he misses tackles as well. His social media activity has been scrutinized. Some people question his attitude as far as being a team player, but here he is, an athletic linebacker that can run, which is what you have to have in this day and age in the NFL. But every time you mention Mack Wilson, there's always a but. Is this a case where if a team really likes him, he might go as early as the 2nd round, or is he a guy that you could see falling all the way to the 3rd day? I'm interested in your take on Mack Wilson.
It's a wide window for him. I think the back end of the 2nd round is probably the ceiling for him. I think maybe the front end of that 4th round, if things don't go well, could be the floor. 3rd round is probably the sweet spot. If I had to guess, I would say he and Deonte Thompson, who we just talked about, probably both go in that round. I was talking to Cecil Hurt from the Tuscaloosa News on a podcast with Ben Jones a week or so ago, and we put the over-under on what pick Wilson will go at 85, I think, which would put him right squarely in the middle of that 3rd round. His ability to cover the pass is what teams are going to like. His athleticism, his ability to play out in space, cover people. To me, he's a guy who's got obvious value in the NFL in 2 areas. One, being able to play the pass on 3rd down, and 2, he's going to be able to play special teams, a core special teams player for sure. So you put those 2 things together, and there's a lot of value there. But then you look at the tape, and he's not quite making the run fits like scouts are used to seeing Alabama inside linebackers do. And the question becomes, is he gonna be able to survive on first and second down in the NFL, or is he gonna be really more just a third down player?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I'm gonna watch this draft and be curious as what teams do with Mack Wilson. Real quickly, just Ross Pierce-Baker, solid, I guess is the best word to describe him. Versatile. What do you figure, about a fifth round on Pierce-Baker?
I think that's probably about right. Most of the rest of the cast is from Alabama, is probably looking at that third day. Savion Smith to be a third day guy, a couple others. Pierce-Baker, like you said, in the mid to late rounds as well. A lot of tape on him. He started a lot of football games at Alabama, and he's got the versatility to play center and guard, which is huge too, because you only get 7 offensive linemen on a Sunday roster. And so everybody's got it. Somebody gets hurt, almost everybody needs to be able to play a couple spots. He can do that.
No doubt about it. All right, going to wrap it up with Chase. What do you want to ask you? Obviously, you're there to cover the draft, but that's Titans territory. And with what Derrick Henry did the last 6 games or so of last season, is he the guy now? Obviously Mariota's the quarterback, but is Henry now going to be where they go in terms of their offense? And what's the feeling up there, the vibe you're getting on Derrick Henry with the Titans? A lot of confidence in him being able to have a potentially a huge year for them.
I think the fan base is definitely ready to see Derrick Henry get fed on a more regular basis because he is. He's put together some spectacular games for the Titans. There's no doubt about it. Of course, when he got there, he was splitting carries with a veteran, DeMarco Murray, I think it was, and he hadn't been fed the ball 20 plus times on a regular basis. That's not what they've done with him in this offense to this point. But I do think you're going to see him be a bigger part of things in 2019. It definitely seems to be. A couple of the fans I've talked to this week about him have said they definitely like to see more of the offensive load put on his shoulders. They think he can carry it.
Man, I do too. I think he's a volume ball carrier. The more he gets in terms of carries, the better he is. And we saw that toward the end of last season. Great stuff, Chase. I really appreciate it. And folks, of course, you read him on NFL.com. You see him every Friday night on Crimson Cover TV with John Copeland and Mike Parker. I'll be sitting in for Chase this week while he's up there in Nashville. So you're at the draft, and I'm hanging out with Parker and Copeland. Well,
you got to make sure those two don't strangle each other for me.
That's what you have to do. You have to serve as the mediator between those two. Hey, I appreciate it, Chase.
All right, Gary.